Luis Sequeira is the costume designer for Guillermo del Toro's Cabinet of Curiosities. I'm Matt Noble from Gold Derby, and I want to kick things off, Lewis, by asking you, what is the secret to designing costumes for horror?
Gosh, I think for me, I guess would be to make sure that ultimately your costumes add to the believability of said horror. I'm always a believer of having the costumes enhance the story rather than detract from the story, unless otherwise noted in the script.
Yeah. Uh, now, Lee, you've worked on films with Guillermo del Toro in the past. This series is 8 episodes. It's like each episode tells a different story. How is that tackling a project and a show where you've got to have completely different costumes for each episode?
Super easy. No. Uh, it was tricky. It was tricky. We had different color palettes, different time periods, obviously, different areas. Um, and so a lot of research went into doing our mood boards and establishing the color palettes for each what we will say film, and then going from there. And really, it was like being air traffic controllers, where we'd have 1950s coming in and 1930s going out, uh, and then it was again tackling all the builds for the show, because doing 1930s as it relates to fresh clothing, well, nothing's fresh from the 30s. So for our leads, everything was built and then aged to have a sense of age, but it really was a coordination of epic proportions.
When you've got these 8 stories that are all part of the one series, but all just distinct stories that stand in their own right, uh, were you conscious of what choices you'd made in other episodes? Like, was there a sort of, pardon the pun, common thread, or was it just each thing its own beast?
Well, I think the common thread was obviously Guillermo del Toro's vision of horror, and apart from really one story, was this, in the back of my brain, it's always nicotine stained, was the key to the thread through of a horror genre, and with that comes the aging that is appropriate for each costume. But yeah, really was creating those distinct palettes for each story. That was the challenge.
And what was the most challenging costume you had to work on?
I think the Dreams of the Witch House Kazaya costume was pretty remarkable, in the sense that the backstory is we were in a meeting, and it was understood that basically we were doing a bonnet and an apron, and the rest of the witch would have been CG. And in that meeting, we learned that no, in fact, it was all going to be costume. And so I looked over at my assistant. We both, we had masks, and luckily no one could see that my jaw had dropped to the ground. And so we had to basically dream up this costume from recreating branches and twigs and bark, and it was remarkable, in the sense that not only was the costume interesting to put together, but it had technicalities that were beyond. We couldn't have multiple costumes, so that one costume had to be able to rise for various locations that were tricky for terrain, and then drop down for the master shot. Even coming down the stairs, half of the dress would come off, and became kind of an apron dress, where we would not see the back end. But you can't come down the stairs, at least not gracefully, in a full dress of twigs and branches.
Yeah, and it's quite a dark costume. And how conscious are you of, like, oh, there's going to be also dark backgrounds? So how does it sort of stand out, but not too much as well?
Yeah, I mean, this is always the key of understanding your aging and the color palettes, and um, you know, very often in the aging room, the my artists work under bright lights, and then I would go turn off the lights, and we would take a look at everything in what will be the ultimate lighting scenario, which is basically a lighter or a candle. But we try to find the highlights and lowlights of each piece.
In you said at that meeting, your jaw behind the mask sort of hit dropped down. Did they say in the meeting sort of like did they sort of assume you already knew you'd be designing the whole costume? Did they realize how shocking this sort of revelation would have been to you?
Well, as soon as it was over, I made the call to the producer, obviously, and said something beep 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 beep. What but no, it was you can look at it now from the other side and say that was a wonderful challenge and remarkable journey. But from the initial shock of it all, it was I don't work in twigs, I don't work in branches, I work in textiles. So but we made it happen. Every branch was hand sculpted and wrapped in muslin and painted, and it was quite a feat.
And from what I understand, that episode, the Dreams in the Witch House episode, is the episode you're intending on submitting to Emmy judges for consideration for best costume design for the series. Why did you choose that episode?
Well, it was actually between that episode and The Outside, which was one of my personal favorites, which was more contemporary with an 80s spin, which was totally fun to do and interesting in the way that with that story there was plenty of color and did not fall within the rankings of the 7 other stories. But I think for Dreamhouse, what was interesting was really the time period, the collection of characters. We had some very curious characters, pardon the pun, on that story, and the witch.
Oh, fantastic! And look, you've worked with Guillermo on works before. You've been nominated for the Oscar for Nightmare Alley and The Shape of Water, and I believe you won the Costume Designers Guild Award for The Shape of Water. So congratulations on that. What is it about the way he tells stories that you think is so compelling?
I think Guillermo is a visionary, not only from obviously the visual aspect, but also in creating these worlds and inspiring all the creatives, from the actors to the production designer to the set decorators and myself, to hone in all our what we bring to the table, and we really work in tandem. And I think you can see that in every project that he brings us together on, is that there's a true cohesiveness, both in storytelling and color palette and textures, and so for that, it really does bring warm feelings to one's soul. And this is a tough industry full of very difficult hours and challenges, and with Guillermo, it all seems quite worth it.
And like, I guess how does the way you approach costume design, how does that fit into his way of telling stories?
I think something that he has said before, and I made me kind of chuckle, was that I was the great worrier. So he knew that if I was worrying, he didn't have to. And so I think that's, for me, that's what every decision has a reaction, and every decision will ultimately lead to another level. And I'm always, in essence, I double check every decision, making sure that I'm going down the right path. And so I tweak color, I tweak textures, I age costumes as we go, and really work to balance the palettes of each character in each scene and each location. And so I think that is something that he appreciates.
What was the thing you worried about the most in Cabinet of Curiosities?
Well, I was worried that witch was going to topple over and hurt herself, which is why the dress itself has almost like hydraulic lift, where we can lift it up and drop it back down. But no, it was really about ensuring that each story did indeed have its own vision. Because of course, in the sense of costume, I'm the constant. And so it's very easy to fall into the trap of same, 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 same. And so for me, it was really trying to stretch out my aesthetic and my way approach to color and character for each story. So for me, it was a little boot campy and very very rewarding.
Mm. Do you have any fun moments from the show, from working on one of the costumes?
Um, Let me see. Fun moments. Being underneath that twig dress, trying to hook up stuff. I think in that same episode, in the opening, we have the seance scene, and creating that character was such a hoot, because it was this ability to do something very outrageous for the time, and again tight timeline, and it really set the stage for that episode. um, you know Ultimately I really enjoy uh, kind of communicating with the directors and finding those unique things that they want to tell, and so whether that's fun or not, sometimes it is fun. Sometimes I have incredible laughing fits on a set, but ultimately it really is about that love of communication and storytelling.
Mm. And how do you think costumes play an important role in storytelling in cinema and television?
Well, again, I'll quote Guillermo, and he
Nice.
says, the set dressing is fantastic in your master, but once you move into your close up, the costumes are the set dressing. And so I think ultimately, we have the biggest real estate on the screen once we move into a mid shot or a close up. And so, I think it's important that costumes help to tell the story, that do not detract from the storytelling, and enhance the ability for the character and the actor to feel their character.
Mm. Alice, what made you want to go into costume design? What sort of inspired you or led you to where you are now?
I was in fashion, and I had a little store uh, showcasing young Canadian designers, and a buyer, an assistant designer, came in from a David Cronenberg movie, and bought some things for me, and they said, "Oh, you should get into film." And I was like, "Oh, well, I love film, um, but I've never really considered it." And so I went for a visit, and the first time I went to the set, I was blown away. That whole, full Monty on the front and full fakery on the back, and so I got the bug, and that was many many moons ago. So segueing from fashion to film was a good path.
Do you remember what film set that was where you got the bug?
Yes, it was an old series called Friday the 13th.
Horror.
And it was basically kind of Cabinet of Curiosities in a way, in the sense that every episode had an item that was cursed, and so the cobwebs, the smell, it smelled like an antique store, and everything was really wonderfully aged and dusty, and I was just kind of entranced.
Yeah. Well, like if you could sort of go back to like younger you on the Friday the 13th set, just sort of starting to fall in love with this sort of thing, what do you think you'd say now that you've done all this stuff?
Well, I don't know. What would I say? I'd say, like, enjoy the ride, which I have. So,
Yeah.
there are very few things in one's life that you have that aha moment, and that was one of them, where I was like, okay, this is forget fashion. This is where I want to be. And I was very fortunate to start off as a wardrobe trainee, and back in the day when wardrobe department were three people. So you had to do it all. I was aging, and I was covering shoes for 17th century episode, and just doing all kinds of wonderful crafty creative things. And so I'm so appreciative of those early years.
Is there like a film or costumes in a film that really inspired you, or you just thought of like you just think you always look back on, oh, that's the gold standard. That's just so awesome, those costumes.
Well, I mean, I have to say, I love Milena Cananaro's work. Um, Astounding costume designer. And I remember distinctly Blade Runner for me was something that just Blade Runner Mac and Mad Max because they both kind of came out at the same time. And I think I played hooky from school many an afternoon to watch Blade Runner. I think 17 times or something, and just that whole thing of like future being retro was so new, and Michael Kaplan did such an amazing job, and that was building, and that's really what the bug was, not only creating and working with a story and a script, but it is the world building aspect that I find fascinating.
Yeah. And you still get to dabble in fashion as a costume designer too, which is nice. So it
For sure.
brings all those things together. Lewis, what do you think is the sort of the magic or the special thing about Cabinet of Curiosities?
I think what I love about the project is the fact that once again, as Guillermo normally does, he lifts you up, takes you on a journey, and drops you back down. And I think what's wonderful about these stories is that he's allowed his various directors to do the exact same thing. Each story takes you on a journey and then brings you back and haunts you. I've heard from many a person that they can't stop thinking about one specific episode. It's not always the same episodes, but I find that I hear that is something that rings true with many people that comment about the series. It's how it sticks with you.
Is there an episode like more from thing now, you as the audience member of Cabinet, is there an episode that sticks with you?
I think Rats was something that was being claustrophobic and feeling that whole inability to escape was something that really kind of creeped me out. And then I love again the outside, that kind of bizarre fashion and transformation and pressure of imagery. I thought was kind of wonderful.
Oh, well, Lewis, thank you so much for talking with us today. All the best of luck with the upcoming Emmy Awards. Hopefully you get nominated. And people watching this interview can go to goldderby.com to watch Emmys and other entertainment awards coverage. Lewis, thanks so much for your time. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.